In 2011, a journalist asked Elon Musk if he considered BYD a legitimate competitor. He didn't just say no, he laughed. He asked the interviewer if they had actually seen the cars, and the audience joined in on the joke. Today, the laughter has stopped. BYD now sells more electric vehicles globally than Tesla. That growth is eroding the market share of giants like Toyota, Volkswagen, and Ford. These companies are now reporting plummeting profits and are being forced to lay off tens of thousands of employees as their traditional business models struggle to compete. Many in the West initially dismissed BYD's rapid growth as a byproduct of subsidies or low-quality imitation. But the scale of their current dominance suggests something else. They were simply the first to build a business around the specific engineering requirements of the electric era. For a century, the automotive world was an exclusive club, dominated by a few powerful firms in Germany, Japan, and the United States. They operated as a slow-moving oligopoly, protected by the massive complexity of building internal combustion engines. In this environment, value was defined by brand prestige and the status of the badge on the hood. Technological innovation moved slowly because consumers were conditioned to pay for heritage rather than software or efficiency. This lack of competition led to a culture of extraction. Prices increased steadily, and manufacturers eventually began locking hardware behind subscription paywalls, charging customers monthly fees to use things like heated seats that were already installed in the car. BYD broke this cycle by treating the car like a consumer electronic. Their seal offers a panoramic roof, rotating digital interfaces, and a high-performance battery warranty for roughly $30,000. When compared to the rising costs and subscription fees of legacy brands, BYD's efficiency suggests that the traditional industry's reliance on brand name over hardware value may have been the real deception all along. In 1995, Wang Chuanfu was a 29-year-old engineer in Shenzhen with no money and no background in the automotive industry. He did, however, have a deep and technical mastery of modern battery chemistry. With a loan from his cousin, he set up a small factory to produce rechargeable cells. He caught the beginning of the mobile phone boom. By focusing on rechargeable lithium-ion technology, he secured contracts to supply batteries for Motorola and Nokia. Within 7 years, BYD grew into the world's largest manufacturer of mobile phone batteries. This early dominance provided the capital to expand and an understanding that the battery would become the most valuable component in modern transportation. In 2003, Wang used that capital to buy a failing, state-owned car manufacturer. At the time, he didn't even have a driver's license. Investors were horrified. In 2 days, BYD shares lost 2.7 billion Hong Kong dollars in value as the press mocked the idea of a battery engineer trying to build cars. Most automakers at the time viewed electric power as a secondary feature, trying to modify existing gasoline car frames to fit bulky battery packs, often with poor results. Wang took the opposite approach. He realized that an electric car should be engineered from the ground up around the battery itself, treating the vehicle as a housing for the energy source. He understood the battery would represent the single largest cost and performance variable in a vehicle. By prioritizing the battery pack over the engine block, he made the traditional car industry obsolete before he even sold his first unit. To maintain this lead, BYD adopted a strategy of absolute vertical integration. They manufacture nearly every part of the car themselves, from seats and lights to software and motors. This self-reliance includes the production of their own microchips, a level of control that most other car companies find impossible to replicate. The advantage of this model became clear during the 2021 global chip crisis. Giants like Ford and Volkswagen were forced to leave thousands of unfinished cars sitting in lots, unable to source a handful of external components. BYD, however, simply increased its internal production. They were able to deliver cars to customers while competitors were at a complete standstill. By controlling their own supply chain, BYD turned a global industrial crisis into a competitive advantage, allowing them to scale while the rest of the world was shrinking. Their second major move was a rejection of the all-electric hype coming out of Silicon Valley. Wayne continued to bet heavily on plug-in hybrids. He recognized that for most drivers in China, charging infrastructure was too sparse to make a pure electric car practical for long-distance travel. This map illustrates how hybrids allowed BYD to capture the mass market. By offering a vehicle that could run on electricity for daily commutes, but switch to gas for long trips, they appealed to 500 million consumers. This pragmatic approach allowed BYD to achieve a massive scale of production, driving down costs and making their cars affordable for the average buyer. In 2020, BYD consolidated its lead with the launch of the BYD battery, utilizing LFP chemistry. This design is thinner and more durable than traditional packs, but its primary advantage is safety. It is significantly less likely to catch fire or explode during a collision. The technology was so effective that Tesla began purchasing these same batteries for its own vehicles. The very company Elon Musk mocked a decade ago is now a critical supplier of the technology that powers his cars. With its domestic dominance now entirely secured, BYD is heavily focused on launching a massive global export campaign. They are flooding international ports with thousands of vehicles, using strict cost advantages to undercut legacy manufacturers in Europe and Southeast Asia. The result is the industrial fallout we see today. Traditional automakers are facing a reality where they can no longer compete on price or technology. BYD's rise is the result of a 30-year lead in battery integration. As they continue to scale, they are forcing the rest of the global industry to either adopt their vertical model or continue losing their hold on the market. On the streets of Southeast Asia, the dominance of traditional brands is visibly evaporating. In Thailand, BYD captured 40% of the electric vehicle market in only 18 months. This shift had immediate consequences for the region's long-standing leaders. Mitsubishi closed its Thai factory, and Mazda was forced to sharply reduce production capacity. The expansion moved to Latin America. In Brazil, BYD took over a massive plant recently abandoned by Ford, marking a symbolic handoff of power. This is the systematic displacement of century-old automotive empires from the markets they once relied on for global stability. The disruption is now reaching Europe, the traditional fortress of the high-end automotive world. The financial data coming out of Germany is stark. Mercedes-Benz reported a 28% drop in profits, while Porsche's earnings fell by 92%. Industrial giants are shrinking in real time. Volkswagen is currently moving forward with plans to cut 50,000 jobs from its workforce. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz recently flew to Beijing with a delegation of 30 CEOs. They arrived to plead for a path forward that keeps their domestic industry from total collapse. This rate of expansion has left traditional boardrooms struggling to reconcile their internal forecasts with the reality on the ground. This disconnect has fueled a wave of official investigations and accusations of foul play from Western trade authorities. To understand the global reaction, we have to look at the evidence. Is BYD a technological pioneer, or is this a house of cards built on state-sponsored deception? Western analysts have focused their scrutiny on BYD's balance sheet, starting with the role of the Chinese state. Reports show that BYD received roughly $4.3 billion in government subsidies between 2015 and 2020. The United States uses similar tools to support its own industry. Through the Inflation Reduction Act, American buyers can receive up to $7,500 in tax credits per vehicle. The real distinction lies in the timing. China deployed these capital injections years earlier and at a scale that allowed their supply chain to mature, while Western brands were still focused on internal combustion. The second major allegation concerns debt. In a typical automotive cycle, suppliers are paid within 60 days. BYD forces suppliers to wait 275 days for payment. This uses the supply chain as interest-free capital, hiding the true cost of rapid growth. Skeptics also point to zero-kilometer sales, where dealers register cars to shell companies to inflate delivery numbers, and labor scandals involving Chinese workers at their construction sites in Brazil. These maneuvers paint a picture of a company using every possible lever to maintain a growth rate that defies traditional industry norms. When a Chinese company disrupts a market, Western media outlets often frame the victory as a form of cheating. This framing ignores actual, documented fraud within the Western industry. Volkswagen deliberately installed software to cheat emissions tests on 11 million vehicles. That scandal led to criminal prosecutions and billions in fines, yet the press described it as a management failure, rather than questioning the legitimacy of the entire German automotive sector. The aggressive focus on BYD as a scam provides a convenient narrative for legacy automakers. It allows them to avoid the reality that they were caught unprepared for the transition to electric power. BYD's advantage started in 1995 with Wang Chuanfu's singular focus on battery chemistry. He built the company around the cell, not the car. Consumer choice in markets like Norway or Australia is driven by a simple calculation. BYD delivers high-density battery technology and modern software at a price point that European and American manufacturers cannot currently match. This pressure is forcing a retreat from traditional manufacturers. Toyota is accelerating its research into solid-state batteries, and Volkswagen is completely restructuring its electric vehicle strategy to keep pace. The irony of the 2011 dismissal is now complete. Today, Tesla actually purchases battery cells from BYD to power its own vehicles. Whether BYD eventually reigns supreme or succumbs to its own debt, the battle has already been won. The industrial center of the automotive world has moved from the West to Shenzhen.